Lost 8 laps to the race leaders. Safety car still out, but the car has been moved to a place of safety. And the rain coming down much more heavily again now, unfortunately. But the safety car coming through Luffield and across the line at Woodcote once again, still with the lights on. So I think this will be the last time through for the safety car, and then we'll be able to get back on with the race. There it goes. The queue of cars formed up behind it, patiently waiting to be unleashed. One decides not to wait patiently and to dive into the pit lane. And not sure which that one was, but we'll get back out onto the circuit. And we are still getting units going out to Copse Corner, so it may well be that we are going to have a delay whilst the barrier repair takes place. See rescue units going out to Copse at the moment. And yes, there is a service vehicle then on the circuit at Copse Corner after the safety car has gone by, and yes, they do want to inspect the damaged Armco that was inflicted by the Amigo motorsport car. Dawson's car then having done some damage to the barrier, which if somebody else hits at the same point is going to cause further issues. So slightly longer delay behind the safety car whilst that is dealt with. And in fairly horrible conditions, our thoughts and thanks go out once again, not only to all of the marshals that make the racing possible, but all of the circuit staff as well, who go out whatever the weather and deal with whatever happens to the circuit in order to make it safe for racing to continue. So slightly elongated safety car period. We've been under yellow for 20 minutes now in this particular segment. So that's a little over 2 hours and 20 minutes altogether in total. And yeah, so this will be say a slightly longer safety car. It's taken us over 8 hours elapsed of the race though, so that's 1/3 distance of the race completed. 8 hours and 3 minutes now completed. The race being led by Duncan Stone for Viking, and 132 laps now completed. Which means we're on the cusp of getting 400 laps completed in total if you do the arithmetic and just multiply by 2 and add it on. It takes us pretty much to 400, but if we have more weather and more safety car, then we won't be in range of 400 laps. So they lead the race currently. With the safety car the way it is positioned, we've got the Viking car nearly a lap ahead. Not a lap ahead, because we've actually got 4 cars on the lead lap, but 3 of them are ahead. So we've got the Viking car at the back of the safety car queue as it was, and then the 3 other cars are all at the front of the safety car queue. So this safety car is helping Viking quite considerably, I reckon, because they get to not quite gain a lap on everybody else, but they do go, they're kind of at the back of the queue, so everybody else being held up by the safety car more than they are. So that's why they've completed 132 laps behind, but on the lead lap is John Gladman at the wheel of the Orange Motorsport Citroen, car number 449. Behind him is Dan Collett in the Eastgate Automotive Racing car number 318, and then Adam Burgess is just behind him in the Citroen Racing Citroen car number 376. So Orange, Eastgate and Citroen 449, 318 and 376 are all on the lead lap, not quite nose to tail behind the safety car, close behind the safety car, and at the back of the safety car queue and almost a lap ahead therefore is Duncan Stone in the Viking car 419. That's the top four. Fifth place, a further lap, a lap behind, properly a lap behind, is number 411. That's James Kenyon in the Kraken Motorsport car. He's circulating just behind the Viking car and therefore a lap behind, but ahead of the other four. Ahead of the other three. That's Adam Burgess. James Kenyon in fifth place. In sixth place is Callum Hutchings in the Old Hat Motorsport car, number 321. Seventh is Brian Trott in the AB Motorsport, number 394. They are all one lap behind the leader. Next up behind Brian Trott is Ryan Bensley in the ASR entered car, and then Sammy Bowler back up to ninth place now. In the Team Merlin International car, and then Paul Bancroft, who was closing but has had his effort stymied for the moment. He is 40 seconds behind with the safety car still out there. Paul Bancroft rounding out the top 10 in the PrepTech UK car. Behind that is Mac Attack Racing, Simon Walker-Hansel, frustrated to be not able to make up ground behind the safety car. He's 11th in 347. Simon Harrison back into the Circuit Pro car that he's just taken over from Patrick Watts. That's car number 385. He's in 12th place. In 13th place, Rob Austin back into the Toll Bar car. Not exactly doing a double stint, but doing a stint, having a stint off and then getting back into the car after just one stint off. So Rob Austin would be going quickly, but for the fact that he's having to sit behind the safety car at the moment. So as would Simon Harrison, of course, but they're frustrated then in 12th and 13th places. Chris Southcott is 14th in car number 398, and then just rounding out the top 15, Matthew Dyer in number 325 in the ITC1 car. He's in 15th place. Then Ian Stinton for Roll Centre, 488, having his second stint behind the car. Pretty sure Ian started that car, 488, but he's now in 16th place. So cars that had a quiet start now beginning to bubble up onto the first screen of times. Ollie Samways is 17th in the B Engineering car, 309. Andrew Stacey in 18th place, number 319, the Scuderia Sundial car. 19th is 474 James Lyons, Ikiri Celtic car, 474. And 20th, 331 Simon Cresswell in the Bianca Water Developments car. So that's the top 20 cars. Safety car continuing to circulate and will probably be out for another 3 or 4 laps yet because of the barrier repair there at Cox Corner. But those are the positions with a little over 8 hours of the race done and 15 or 16 still to go. The Alpha Live data stream is currently showing a replay. If you are watching that, that's action from earlier on today. Ourselves of what happened.
Well, what a magnificent sight the grid make as they left the line up the inside 384 area motorsport with Civic Cup regular Rob Baker from out on board has taken the lead as they funnel their way through almost out of one. It needs to be back to
And as the replay continues, so does the barrier repair work continue at Cox Corner. Just having a quick look down to see who we still have in the race overall. Pretty much a full field of the 99 cars that started the race. Pretty much all of them still going ground. The ones that we may not see again. Let's just do that the other way around. Having not been seen for more than an hour now is the 363 car. So that's completed 105 laps, so we haven't seen it for more than an hour. So whether we'll see car 363 again. Stephen Bell was the driver when we last had it out there. Lee Baverstock, Andrew Nelson, Andrew Lindley, the other drivers. It's not being shown on my list in the pits, but that's possibly because it's been brought in through another entrance to the pits on the back of a flatbed vehicle of some sort. Number 349, the Team C'est La Vie car, hasn't been seen either since it was crashed out of the lead of the race by Chris Chadwick. Pretty sure that car will be being worked on though, so every possibility that we might see the car again before dawn or at some point to be seen. The Manpower Motorsport car, number 468, we understand is another car that we probably won't see again. That was the impression that we were given, but you never quite know whether that car might be going to be able to be repaired. And then the Midway Motorsport car has also been hors de combat for about half an hour. That's the 374 car, which I think was the cause of the previous safety car incident. And then Matthew Dawson, of course, who we haven't seen since this safety car period started, because he was the one that caused it. He was the car that clouted the barrier. Now the barrier is going to be repaired, and we're going to carry on. So hopefully the gala performance with Amigo car of Matthew Dawson will also be back out at some point. So of the 99 starters, still many of them circulating, and at the back, number 99, 99th place, is 364 Austin Greenway in the Atomic Racing car. He has just gone through and completed his 61st lap, so still running, although he's completed less than half the distance, and still trying to make up ground. Into the pits comes the second place car. John Gladman then choosing at this moment to come in to refuel. This was a car that took a penalty earlier on for not having the U-tag system properly observed, and so has fallen back a little bit and is being shown as now having done its 5th pit stop, where the standard is for 3 pit stops at this point. They took an extra pit stop which we never quite got to the bottom of during the one of the safety car periods. They also had in addition to their penalty, they also had a very short stop. I think they might have actually had 2 different penalties for 2 different offences, which is why they've had 2. Anyway, John Gladman coming in at this point, seeing that the safety car period is going to be a bit longer perhaps, saying, look, if they're going to be repairing the barriers and we're not going to get caught behind the queue, we might as well get some more fuel. He's got probably about 3/4 of his tank already used, so quarter full. Why not come in and fill it up? Most of the rest of them have either come in already during this safety car period, The one notable one who hasn't, who we might look to make a stop, is the AB Motorsport car, number 394, which would be a good opportunity for that car to come in. Also got in at the moment the Scott Walker Hansel car, car number 347 out of 10th place, which has just made its pit stop. And just as a reminder, that car, the Macatak Racing Car 347, Scott Walker Hansel in the pits for further fuel. That's a 3-driver team, and may well be just getting fuel and staying behind the wheel, because he's only just taken the car over, well, actually about an hour ago, so he's got 2 hours still to go, but if he fills it up now, then he'll be able to go till the end of that tank full, and that will then take him up to about 2:30 later this morning. Safety car coming down through the Brooklands, and Luffield once again, still the lights on, still the units at Cops repairing the barrier there, and the barrier normally taking about 20 minutes to repair when such repair work can be done quickly in normal conditions, but in this weather it really is very unpleasant weather to be working, but nevertheless it is carrying on. The safety car train comes across the line, bringing the cars with it and bringing the race leader Duncan Stone through for his 135th lap, and the closest opposition is sitting in the pit lane, so that will enable a lap to be put on that, and should enable Dan Collett in the Eastgate Automotive Racing car, when it finally files through behind the safety car, to pick up a place at the expense of John Gladman, who's sitting there getting fuel in the pit lane. So that will be a change for second place. Up into second place then will come Eastgate Automotive Racing. The combination, David Drinkwater having already driven the car twice, but being ably assisted by James Poulton, Dan Collett and Clive Brookson, not yet having driven that car, but such is the nature of this kind of race that you can go quite a long way through it without yet having driven. 8 hours having elapsed, and temperatures still being shown on my phone at around 6 degrees, and with rain possible to continue, it says here. Let's just look at the detail of that, for potentially another couple of hours yet, so yes, rain until possibly 4:30, so it's now coming up to 2 o'clock, and not solid, but intermittent showers, which is what we've had. It's been pretty much the order of the day for most of the day, it seems, but we started the race in reasonably dry conditions, and it was only as night fell that conditions tended to somewhat deteriorate. the safety car taking the field past the repair work, and drivers, as they have been throughout, driving nice and slowly past the area where work is going on. Speed up when they get past there to catch up with the queue behind the safety car, but still the safety car lights are on as it leads the field through the loop, but over the way on away to the safety car driver's right hand side, you can see the tail enders still making their way through the Beckett's S's, because the field getting somewhat spread out sometimes behind the safety car, and so the tail enders going through the Beckett's S's while he's leading the head part of the field through the loop. So so we've had went through the list a while ago of those cars missing, but only a handful of them, still over 90 cars circulating, and conditions really very unfortunate indeed. Having had such good weather last weekend as well, it's doubly frustrating that this weekend should turn into such a difficult set of conditions, but nevertheless everybody still says how much they're enjoying themselves out there no matter what happens, still enjoying the activity, and signs that the barrier work replacement has now been completed. The rescue units making their way away from the scene of the accident, and I think that means now they're out of the way. Whereabouts is the safety car? Just coming through across the start finish line again, so we'll get one more lap I think, and then we'll be back to green flag racing, but with cars having lost all of the temperature they had in their tyres, and probably lost a bit of the temperature on the car as well, and with conditions considerably damper than they were when the safety car came out to control the field. It's going to be a difficult restart at the end of this lap, if this lap is the one on which they are going to restart, which is a piece of speculation on my part. Still 3 cars on the lead lap. The reason there were 4 and there are now 3 is that we had a pit stop whilst the safety car was out from the 321 Old Hat Motorsport car, which has dropped it off the lead lap. So 321 Callum Hutchings has dropped down to 5th place whilst we've been behind the safety car because of having that pit stop. He was in 2nd when the safety car first came out, but Callum Hutchings now down in 5th and therefore off the lead lap. The leader of the race still Duncan Stone in the Viking car, and as the train has panned out, he is at the front, no sorry, he's at the back of the queue, waiting to come through. Everybody else will be adding to their lap tally now. And so Duncan Stone at the back of the safety car. No, he's not. He's I'm wrong. He's already gone through. But still, there is this not quite a lap, because the 2nd place car, which is now Dan Collett in the Eastgate Automotive car, is ahead of Duncan Stone in the safety car queue. So once the safety car pulls off, we hope at the end of this lap, then they will be racing on the same lap but separated by I reckon the best part of 2 minutes between the 1st and 2nd place cars, but the battle is going to be on them for 2nd place, because Adam Burgess is only the car behind, or 2 cars behind Dan Collett, so there's not much to choose between Dan Collett in 2nd place in the 318 Eastgate Automotive Racing car and 376 Adam Burgess in the Citroen Racing car. So 318, 376 going to be battling for 2nd place when the safety car pulls off. James Kenyon in the Kraken Motorsports car 411 is a further 30 seconds behind, so not very far, and that's with the safety car out 30 seconds behind. So once that turns into racing, that'll be under 10 seconds. And then behind him is Callum Hutchings, having got a full tank of fuel and raring to go. So the safety car leading them. Lost where he is. He's now there's still a service vehicle on the circuit at Brooklands, and the safety car is just coming now into Village. Yeah, safety car coming through the loop and out onto the Wellington Straight there, and there's a service vehicle, I think, just returning to its normal resting place, wherever that might be, just on the service road coming out of the paddock assembly area, coming down the Wellington Straight. Now, whether that's going to mean that we have another lap behind the safety car, or whether that service vehicle can do what it needs to do and get out of the way, at the moment is unclear, but we'll know soon enough as the safety car comes down the Wellington Straight and will come into sight at the end. Lights are still on the safety car, in fact, as they come down the Wellington Straight and turn left into Brooklands and comes into our sight still with the lights on. So although the work at Copse has been complete, there is something else which is causing us a slightly longer delay. This by far has been our longest safety car, 45 minutes now for this one safety car period. So a rather extended session, and the service vehicle that there is some more vario repair work being done, isn't there? That's a remnant from an incident that took place many hours ago at the end of the Wellington Straight on the entrance to Brooklands, where when Dave Goddard was here, a car, and I'll say it was 308, I can't actually remember, but I think it was car number 308, which kind of lost it under braking going into the left-hander at Brooklands. And yes, it was one of the Emax Motorsport cars, which might have been either Dan Perry or Greg Owens, can't remember now, but that did some damage to the barrier, and the decision being taken that whilst we're repairing barriers, we will do that one as well. So slightly longer period behind the safety car than any of us wanted, and that could mean that this goes on for another 2 laps or so whilst that barrier is dealt with as well. So if that doesn't call for another bar of chocolate, I don't think anything does. So we'll go through the Easter provisions and see what's left of them. As the cars slowly come through the start-finish area and go through to complete another lap, albeit again a big tailback forming as they come out of Luffield, and again cars do actually come to a complete standstill at the exit of Luffield and then speed up again as they come across start finish line. So the safety car pace, the safety car slowed down quite a lot when it got to Brooklands as well. But it means that the safety car does get, or the train of cars behind the safety gets spread very much more around the circuit, and perhaps that's not a bad thing, because it means that when they do get underway again, there's slightly bigger gaps amongst the cars than there was beforehand. My thanks go to Mark Werrell for providing chocolate bars, but it can only be a chocolate bar provided by a commentator that it's a crunchy bar that makes an enormous noise when you crunch into it. So that's why I will be going off air a couple of times in the next 2 minutes whilst I crunch to myself, but need a little bit of chocolate to keep me going through the night, as rain's still spattering down and causing quite a large amount of spray now. So when we do go green, it will be very necessary to be very cautious out there, because the amount of grip is going to be a lot less than it was. Now, barrier work at Brooklands has, I reckon, already been completed, so I think we're pretty much in a position where we might be able to go to green flag racing at the end of this lap. But then I said that last time. Safety car lights are on as the leaders turn through the loop, and now we wait for them to come down the Wellington Straight and see whether or not they get turned off halfway down the Wellington Straight, and then we'll be able to go racing when the cars come into sight at Brooklands. So indeed, the lights are now off as the safety car comes through Brooklands. We're going to go green flag racing at the end of this lap. So after a rather long safety car period of nearly 51 minutes, we're going to get the race underway once again, with Duncan Stone in the lead of the race by a good sizable chunk. Dan Collett in second place by nothing at all from Adam Burgess in third. So 318, 376 are the two to look out for, battling for second and third places as we get the race underway again just after 2 o'clock in the morning, with still some 15 and a half hours of the Citroen 24 hours here at Silverstone to go, sponsored by the Distrigo Parts Distribution Group. So Duncan Stone already has gone through, and we wait for the rest of the field to file on through, but I reckon it's going to be when we get the front end of the queue coming through again that we then get this close battle. There they go now, just 2 seconds apart, the battle for second place. Dan Collett and Adam Burgess in second and third places. And yeah, it's not quite a full lap then is the lead, because Duncan Stone got very much the better end of the safety car queue. The lap times under the safety car somewhere in the region of 7 minutes, so now getting down to 4 minutes as the cars speed up once the racing getting underway again, and we'll get a proper lap time next time around. So cars on the far side of the circuit, waiting for them to come back into view then on this side of the circuit. And then we'll be able to work out what the realistic margin is first to second, and then see what's happening with that battle for second place between the two cars of Dan Collett and Adam Burgess. At the moment, Dan Collett still just ahead of Adam Burgess, but getting underway and with lots of spray around. You're never quite sure who you're fighting with and where they are. Leaders already on the Wellington Straight. One car has kind of got itself clear of all the rest, having been in the pits when the safety car pulled off, and has been able to get away rather more easily. So waiting for the 318 of Dan Collett and Adam Burgess coming through. They'll come through first, and then we'll wait for the Duncan Stone car to come through next, and that will be putting it on to 139 laps completed. And the gap first second is going to be something over 2 minutes. It's going to be something like about 2 minutes and 15 seconds, I think, by the time we get a reasonable interval on the first two through. And the changes happened, in fact, on that lap. So Adam Burgess getting a better start, and he's up to second place now. So first flying lap under the newly resumed race. 3 minutes 24 seconds for Adam Burgess, 3 minutes 29 seconds for Dan Collett. They were separated by just 2 seconds as they started the lap. So that means that the gap between them has gone up to 1.8 seconds. So Adam Burgess, second place, Citroen Racing, back to third place, Dan Collett in the Eastgate Automotive Racing car. And then the gap first to second, as the leaders went through, has now gone up to 3. It is practically a gap. So yes, they're nose to tail, aren't they? The three are nose to tail, but Adam Burgess, Dan Collett, and then Duncan Stone in that order as they cross the line. So Duncan Stone is just a second behind Adam Burgess and Dan Collett, so he may well just decide to sit there, because those two cars, 376 and 318, are virtually a lap behind him, so he may just sit there and watch them for a little while. His lap time, Duncan Stone's lap time, 3 minutes 30 on that opening lap, 3 minutes 29 for Dan Collett, 3 minutes 24 for Adam Burgess. Adam Burgess got ahead of Dan Collett. Duncan Stone stayed behind a pair of them, but he can do so at his leisure because he's a lap ahead. So the leader of the race then can see the competition ahead of him. Still those three cars on the lead lap, all having completed 3 pit stops, and with the fuel, of course, continuing to being used during the safety car period, albeit at a slower rate. What have we had? They've been out on that tank of fuel. Just looking down, the race leader, Duncan Stone, has already been out for an hour and a half on that tank of fuel, but he's only completed 23 laps, so there should be at least another hour and a half of fuel there. And Dan Collett is in a similar situation. He's done one more lap, but similarly over an hour and a half of driving, although very nearly an hour of that has been behind the safety car. Car's going through once again, and we'll see whether or not the Dan Collett has been able to challenge back as the cars go through and complete another lap. Still a lot of spray coming off the backs of the cars, so it really has got, the conditions have got considerably worse whilst the safety car was out for very nearly an hour, just over 50 minutes in the end. And And Adam Burgess continuing to pull away from Dan Collett then. Another 4 seconds on that lap, so Adam Burgess being a lot braver in these conditions than Dan Collett, so he's dropped away now to some 6 seconds adrift as we wait for the leader to go through, and there he goes now. Duncan Stone to complete that lap and restore the positions to where he was, just practically a lap ahead of the rest of the field. Fourth place, Kraken Motorsport. James Kenyon is there in 4th place. He's a lap down on the race leader, but in fact that means he's only 37 seconds behind Dan Collett, and last time around Dan Collett lapping more quickly than James Kenyon, so that gap is probably likely to stay there. However, Callum Hutchins lapping more quickly than either the race leader Duncan Stone or Dan Collett. So in fact the fastest guy out there on that most recent lap was probably Brian Trott in the number 394 AB Motorsport car. Let's see who was. Yes, it was Brian Trott then in the AB Motorsport car, a 3 minutes 19 second lap time on that most recent lap. Brian in 6th place in car number 394, so he is closing up on the Callum Hutchins car, which is itself one of the quicker cars out there, but there is a big gap of nearly 2 minutes between Callum Hutchins and Brian Trott, so that is not a gap that's about to change soon. The field having been bunched up behind the safety car, gradually getting spread out again as those who either pitted during the safety car period or were up at the front of the field have been able to get away. The faster cars that were in amongst the pack taking their time a bit more to get up to speed and get a bit of clear track to get some good laps in. Very often in a race like this, it's when you do have a lot of time behind the safety car, it's a matter of waiting for a chance to get some quick laps in, get some clear laps in, and then use the car for what it was meant to do, having a lot of fun in, as opposed to having to deal with all the difficulties of traffic, weather, not being able to see where you're going, and umpteen other disadvantages. So last time around, the Citroen racing car of Adam Burgess managed to lap 4 seconds quicker than Dan Collett did. What's going to happen at the end of this lap? 3 seconds quicker on this lap. So it's nearly 4, not quite 4, but the gap then going up now to nearly 10 seconds first to second, and Duncan Stone is, say, getting left behind a little bit. His lap times are still not as quick as either of the cars behind him, but let's say that is an advantage of nearly a lap that the Viking car has, and Duncan Stone probably quite happy just to stay out there in the knowledge that he does have this nearly a lap of an advantage that he can just sit comfortably on. Other notable cars, just to pick up on some of them that we've not mentioned for a little while. Rob Austin up there in 12th place. Simon Harrison, I should mention first of all, he's in the top 10 in the car that he's just taken over from Patrick Watts. 10th place for Simon Harrison. Rob Austin in 12th in the Tollbar racing car. Ian Stinton in the Roll Centre car, he's 14th still, and that's pretty much where he was before. The Mack Attack racing car down in 19th place, Simon Walker-Hansel back at the wheel of the 347 numbered car. Who else? The DHD Motorsport car that was well up earlier on. Alan Yearley back at the wheel of that car, 3:30. He's in 32nd place. Marino Fanchitti is out in the 351 Stand Up to Cancer sponsored car, and that car is 35th overall. It was further up the field, but has dropped back again with having made another pit stop. Now 5 laps behind the race leader, and Marino just 20 seconds ahead of Michael Mallock. They'll be enjoying a little battle there in the 464 Racing car, numbered 464. How far back is the eSports and Stars? Miguel Faisca is back in 74th place in car number 306. Back in the 323s though, so not hanging about. And that car, say, in 74th place with Miguel Faisca behind the wheel of it at the moment. Chris Hart in the Rusty Nail Racing car, 383. He's in 78th place. And looking down to the back of the field, cars still circulating down right the way down to 99th place, and still opportunities for those cars that haven't been seen for a while to be seen again. But 363 Stephen Bell's Atomic Racing car now 2 hours without having been seen on the circuit. That's the most delayed car at the moment, but not the last placed car, so it's the most delayed one. Stephen Bell has completed 105 laps, but still going. CDMC, Ian Witt behind the wheel, 391. That's in 96th place. In 97th place, having been out of the race for an hour, probably to become a retirement, is the Manpower Motorsport car, 468. But the two cars, that's completed 88 laps, but behind it, Amigo Motorsport, Daniel Storkerson, that car has recovered, is back out, is circulating. Dan Storkerson at the wheel. Circulating pretty quick as well, 327. That's completed 87 laps, so just 1 lap behind the Manpower car, which is still in the garage. And then Austin Greenaway in the another of the Atomic Racing cars, that's number 364, and he's still circulating. Lap time of 3 minutes 23 on his last lap. He's completed 70 laps, so some 17 behind the car in front of it. And a total of 72 laps behind the race leader, so still a long way to go for that car to make up some ground before the end of the race. I would say, and I'm afraid I'm not brave enough to go out in it because I'm getting quite chilly in the box, and that's one of the warmer places to be, but the weather is getting worse. There's no doubt in my mind that the rain coming down considerably worse than it was before, and yellow flags at Copse once again, as another car has gone off on the exit of Copse Corner, and it is a predominantly white car whose number panel is entirely reflecting back into the camera, so we can't actually see which number that is, but he's stuck out there in the gravel. The front wheels are fairly deep, but he's not that far off the hard standing, probably 3 yards and he'd be on the hard standing, but he's at least 6 inches into the gravel, and needs a hoist to get him out of the gravel to get him onto that little bit of hard standing. The car Marshall's going to its assistance, but it's going to need the tow truck. Now, is that going to enable it to get out with a local yellow, or are we going to need to go to safety car again to get that car out of the gravel on the exit of Copse Corner? Very close to not the last incident we had at Copse, but the one before that, same kind of place, and that car was relatively easy to extract, but I'm sure recovery unit drivers will tell you every recovery is slightly different, needs a slightly different action to get the car out and going again. And the bigger unit coming to the rescue, I think, of that car that's stuck at Copse Corner, and then we'll be able to yes, keep the racing under green flag for the majority of the circuit, just the area around Copse Corner needing a yellow flag. Drivers not being entirely reliant on seeing the flag signals in the darkness, of course. They do have lights that are duplicating what the marshal's flags would be showing them anyway. So yellow lights, and yes, the hard-working rescue unit once again coming to the rescue, and we'll be picking up that car, bringing it back to a place of safety, and for the moment at least that looks like it's going to be possible to do it under a local yellow. A 3-minute stop and go penalty for exiting the pits whilst the red lights are on is assessed to the 312 car, which is the Sean Watley, Chris Williams, Vic Hope and Clayton Klingman car, the Advantech Endurance Racing car. Car number 312, which is currently one of the last cars up in the 90s. In fact, it's not even in the top 3 screens of 30 cars each. We're down in 90th, 312, 91st place for that car, and the 3-minute penalty won't help that one any. It will be frustrating for the drivers, but nevertheless a lesson that you do need to observe the traffic lights. The delay you will get observing the traffic lights is not as great as the delay you will get for the penalty for not observing it, so makes sense really. The rescue unit has got that car halfway out of the gravel bed, but it's now stopped, and I just hope it hasn't can't actually see the car at the moment because it's obscured by the rescue unit, but it may be that either the band has cooled enough, or the car itself has got itself bogged down in the gravel a little bit more. It was noticeable how far down in the gravel it had got bogged down already. Into the pits comes the 394 car, and that was in the hands before it came in of Brian Trott, so that's in for routine service after 42 laps for Brian Trott, so a long stint. In fact, that's actually the 3-hour mark pretty much for Brian Trott, which is the maximum driving time. Maximum driving time applies whether the safety car's out or not, so even if your fuel will go to 3.5 hours, your driving time stops you at 3 hours, so you'll have to come in at that point and get fuel anyway. So that's what Brian Trott has had to do in the 394 car. And a similar fate, 15, probably got about another 20 minutes before a similar fate will fall for Ryan Bensley at the wheel of the 390 car, the ASR entry. For Ryan Bensley, I see why the rescue unit stopped. It was because the car which it had rescued has got going again. Just put it onto the hard standing, and once he was on the hard standing, he's been able to fire it up and head out back into the fray. So we'll see that car when it comes round at the completion of this lap, probably to come into the pits to have all the gravel removed, but it may well be that by the time he gets here he's got all the gravel round the rest of the circuit anyway. So slow car on the circuit, rejoining at Copse Corner, heading up towards Maggots at the moment, and the rescue unit can head back to its little hutch behind the tyre wall at the outside of Copse exit. And we're still under green flag conditions. Adam Burgess still ahead of Dan Collett and continuing to lap more quickly, and we haven't mentioned it for a little while, but that gap having been nothing, Adam Burgess only being able to take second place when the safety car pulled off less than half an hour ago, has now extended that margin up to some 21 seconds. So he's been lapping 4 seconds faster on that last lap, and opening up the gap to 21 seconds. Meanwhile, Callum Hutchings in the Old Hat Motorsport car 321 has been closing the gap and is now just 52 seconds behind in 4th place, albeit he does have the leader Duncan Stone between himself and Dan Collett. So Callum Hutchins, the order on the track is Burgess, Collett, Stone, Hutchings, although the order of the race is Stone, Burgess, Collett, Hutchins. Lap times from Duncan Stone have been pretty much consistent, but over the 3:30 mark since we've got things underway again. So coming up to 9 hours completed, not quite at the 9-hour mark, but by the time the cars cross the line next time around, it will be 9 hours completed for Duncan Stone in the Viking Citroen, and he will by 9 hours have completed 146 laps of the race. And the hope can only be that the race pace will increase once we get into the daylight hours.